You may not need another sign. You may need more stability, because sometimes the search for signs is not really about guidance. It is about anxiety. It is about wanting something outside of you to confirm that you are safe, that the manifestation is still working, that you did not mess anything up, that the state is real. And at first, looking for signs can feel comforting. You notice a coincidence, you hear a phrase, you see something that reminds you of your desire. You feel like life is speaking to you. And sometimes those moments can be meaningful. But there is a point where signs stop helping you stabilize and start becoming the thing you depend on to stay okay. That is where many people accidentally leave the manifesting state. They are no longer living from the identity. They are scanning life for permission to believe, and those are not the same thing. The old version of you says, "Show me something so I can relax." The new version of you says, "I can remain steady before proof appears." That is a completely different state. For example, maybe you make a decision from the new version of yourself. You finally stop chasing. You stop forcing. You stop explaining. You choose differently. And for a moment, you feel calm. Then later that day, nothing dramatic happens. No obvious confirmation, no emotional high, no sudden outer shift, and your mind starts looking around. You wonder, was that the right decision? Did I actually shift? Should something have happened by now? So instead of letting the new state settle, you begin searching for evidence. You look for a sign because silence feels uncomfortable. But silence does not always mean nothing is happening. Sometimes silence is where stability is being practiced. Or maybe you are working towards something important, a new path, a new role, a creative project, a healthier version of your life. You take one grounded step. You prepare, you apply, you create, you show up. But instead of letting that action be enough for the day, you start searching for proof that the action mattered. You replay small details. You wonder if someone noticed. You look for some outside signal that says, "Yes, keep going." But the deeper question is, can you keep going before the signal arrives? Because that is where the state becomes real. Not when everything confirms you, but when you can remain aligned without needing constant confirmation, or maybe something emotional happens. Someone responds in a neutral way. A plan changes. An opportunity takes longer than expected. A quiet week passes. Nothing is necessarily wrong, but the old identity feels uneasy. So it starts asking for a sign. Not because the sign is truly needed, but because the nervous system wants relief. It wants certainty. It wants something to hold on to. That is why the search for signs can become exhausting, because every sign gives temporary relief. But then the mind needs another one, and another one, and another one. The sign becomes a temporary emotional hit. But it does not build stability. Stability is built when you learn to stay in the state without needing life to reassure you every few minutes. This does not mean signs are bad. It does not mean you should ignore meaningful moments. It does not mean life cannot reflect your state back to you. But signs are not supposed to become your foundation. Your identity is the foundation. Your state is the foundation. Your repeated return to the version of yourself who already has it is the foundation. A sign can encourage you, but it should not be the only reason you keep believing. Because if a sign is the only thing holding your state together, then the state is still fragile. And the manifesting state is not meant to be fragile. It is meant to become normal. This is why some people feel powerful one day and completely lost the next. They saw something that made them feel certain. Then the next day, nothing happened, so the certainty disappeared. But that is not stability. That is emotional dependence on evidence. Real stability looks different. Real stability says, "I saw the sign, but I do not need to chase another one. I felt encouraged, but I do not need to keep proving the state. I can continue from the identity even when the day looks ordinary." That ordinary part matters because most of life is not dramatic. Most of the manifesting state is lived in ordinary moments: making breakfast, getting ready, going to work, answering an email, sitting in silence, choosing not to spiral, choosing not to chase, choosing not to turn every quiet moment into a problem. That is where the state stabilizes. Not only when something magical happens, but when you can remain the new version of yourself on a normal Tuesday with no applause. That is why more signs are not always the answer. Sometimes the answer is practicing being the version of yourself who does not need another sign before taking the next aligned step. So what helps? The next time you catch yourself searching for confirmation, pause and ask, what am I hoping this sign will make me feel? Am I hoping to feel safe, chosen, certain, on track, good enough, not behind? Once you name the feeling, you can stop making the outside world responsible for giving it to you immediately. Then ask, what would stability look like right now? Not a huge transformation, not a dramatic ritual, just one stable response. Maybe stability looks like closing the search tab. Maybe stability looks like not asking the same question again. Maybe stability looks like continuing your day without turning silence into rejection. Maybe stability looks like trusting the aligned action you already took. Maybe stability looks like saying, I do not need to be reassured every hour to remain in the state. That is powerful because the old identity keeps asking life to prove the shift. The new identity begins living as proof. And that is where the manifestation becomes less fragile. You stop swinging emotionally based on every small detail. You stop needing every coincidence to mean something. You stop making every ordinary moment feel like a setback. You begin to understand that quiet does not mean absence. Delay does not mean denial. Neutrality does not mean failure. And no sign does not mean no movement. Sometimes the strongest evidence is not another symbol. Sometimes the strongest evidence is that you did not spiral when no symbol appeared. That is growth. That is stabilization. That is the manifesting state becoming more natural. So if you have been searching for signs lately, be honest with yourself. Are you looking because you feel guided, or are you looking because you feel unstable? That distinction matters because guidance feels calm. Desperation feels urgent. Guidance does not need to be checked 10 times. Desperation keeps asking for more proof. And once you can tell the difference, you stop letting signs control your state. You can appreciate them when they come, but you do not collapse when they do not. You can notice life reflecting something back, but you do not abandon the identity when the reflection is quiet. That is real stability. And that may be what you actually need right now. Not another sign, not another confirmation, not another reason to believe for the next 5 minutes, but the quiet ability to remain in your manifesting state, even before the outside world gives you something to react to. Subscribe and enter your manifesting state.